from Timiskaming, Cochrane.
Thank you. My question is to the Acting Premier. Yesterday, we learned that a private gas plant in Brampton gamed the Liberal government system for managing private electric contracts to the tune of $100 million. We know the company was fined for $10 million by the OEB for the fraud, and the Minister of Economic Development and Growth told reporters they had also paid back the full $100 million. But the amount paid back by the private gas plant is blacked out in the Ontario Energy Report. Will the Acting Premier tell us when the people of Ontario will be able to see for themselves that this private gas plant company has paid them back in full?
Thank you. Deputy Premier.
The Minister of Economic Development and Growth.
Minister of Economic Development and Growth.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll share with the member some of the facts on this as they've come forward, and some actually reported today. In all, 92.
Excuse me. We're in warnings. Thank you. Carry on.
In all, the IESO negotiated 92% of the costs coming back. That includes the $10 million fine. The challenge here, Mr. Speaker, is some of these are disputed inappropriate costs that the company would take a different view on as to whether they were inappropriate or not. So there was I could call it a negotiation between the IESO and the company to determine which of these costs were really deemed to be ineligible, and the fact that 92% was recovered in the eyes of the IESO was deemed to be fair to the company, but more so fair to ratepayers.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Again to the Acting Premier. If it's indeed true that the vast majority of these costs have been repaid by the company, can the Acting Premier tell us when the people will see that on their hydro bills? When will they be paid back for this fraud?
Thank you. Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the fact is that, yes, indeed, the 92% of the costs have been, or the process of being paid back. I can't confirm that, indeed, that those dollars have flowed yet, but they will. My understanding is they'd go right back into the IESO and the rate system, but you'd have to check with finance and our accountants to determine exactly how that cash flow happens. But I appreciate the question, and certainly we may be able to determine a more in-depth answer to you, but in checking with our finance officials down the road.
Answer. Thank you. Final supplementary.
Ontario families and businesses are struggling under the weight of soaring hydro bills. Rates have gone up by 300% under this Liberal government, and now we learn that in addition to paying for the hydro they use, families were forced to pay $100 million to a private gas plant company for no reason at all. I'll ask the Acting Premier again, how will she ensure that the people of Ontario who paid those hydro bills get their money back?
Minister.
Well, again, Mr. Speaker, let's be very, very clear. $100 million has not been lost. $100 million, in fact, has been recovered.
Excuse me. Not 100% sure, so I'll just wait. Carry on.
In addition, Mr. Speaker, the company that was accused of exploiting the process has been fined $10 million. So that money has flowed back into the system, Mr. Speaker. Ratepayers are not going to be out. There is a dispute in terms of some of these costs. There's no question. I think that speaks to the system, the definition of what appropriate costs ought to have been, and the IESO has strengthened that system as well to ensure that this can't happen in the future. It's an unfortunate circumstance. There's no defending the company, Mr. Speaker, but at the end of the day, the IESO took the actions that it ought to have taken, and ratepayers have been compensated, Mr. Speaker.